Like and subscribe for endless entertainment.
In the land of Orario, the gods sealed away their powers to descend from heaven in the hopes of finding new entertainment and gifted those who worshipped them with blessings to fight against the monsters that live within the dungeon. Our story begins with the Loki Familia battling against a horde of Minotaurs while their new mage attempts to cast a spell in the open and suddenly gets targeted by one of the beasts. But luckily Ais arrives just in time to save her life, before going on to slaughter the rest of the wave without breaking a sweat. The guild descends to the 50th floor where Lafia is feeling depressed because she cancelled the incantation when the oversized stake attacked her, as the well-endowed Tione and the flat-chested Tiana tries to convince their comrade to eat some food, though they have little luck until Ais joins them to question what's happening. The elf suddenly finds herself in a good mood, then rushes over to thank the bad bee for her help during the battle, prior to apologizing for being nothing more than a burden to their familia. However, Ais hands out some head pats to cheer up the elf girl, which ended up breaking our little Lafia's mind. The dark-skinned queens notice that the mage really seems to admire the blonde waifu, and she admits that the swordswoman is the closest thing the gods have ever made to perfection, unlike herself, who doesn't even deserve to be on this mission. But this statement gets Tione mad since the captain personally picked the members for this expedition, as Finn arrives on the scene wondering what caused such a commotion. Tiana tries to snitch, but the love-struck woman silences the informant in the most creative way possible, which starts a fight between the itty-bitty-titty committee and the jiggly jugs. Finn announces that the dangerous part of their quest will begin soon, then calls over Ais to have a discussion while Riveria asks her fellow mage to come along too, leaving Tione to edge from seeing the captain from behind until she reaches the peak of orgasmic happiness. On the other side of the camp, Riveria inquires about what's bothering Lafia. She explains that when fighting powerful monsters her mind freezes up, though the high elf says this affliction will pass with experience, especially because the skills Lafia was blessed with will one day make her be able to fight alongside Ais on equal terms. When Bet reveals that he was listening from above and tells our elf girl to give up on being an adventurer if she's too scared to be an asset to their guild before returning to the forest. Inside of the captain's tent we find Finn scolding Ais for rushing into combat instead of supporting the front line like she was told, and reminds her that they are all a part of a team, so just one person straying away from the plan could lead to their demise. But the dwarf points out that the young woman might have made the right decisions since Riveria's enchantment may have taken too long to activate, which makes the captain relent by dismissing the sword princess with a warning. At the entrance to the 51st floor, some members of the guild are thankful that safety zones exist inside the dungeons to give explorers the chance to take a break, when they suddenly see a crash of rhinos running away from a huge wave of glizzy monsters. Everyone hears the screaming in the distance and gathers to fight against this new threat, where the Caterpie uses sludge bomb on our allies. However, the flat-chested queen gives it an improv brain surgery, but the creature begins squirting its sticky fluids all over the battlefield. Tiana realizes her weapon is quickly decaying and begins freaking out about it as Bet joins the battle to give the caterpillar a free foot job to push the monster back from whence it came. The captain announces that bug types are weak to fire, so the dark-skinned queens will be the distractions while the mages completes their incantation. Riveria asks Finn's permission to make Lafia take the lead in order to gain some experience, thus he agrees because the guild will be unable to continue the raid past this floor and it's best to take advantage of any benefits that can be gained. Our little elf girl begins the chant for a skill as the rest of the Loki Familia tries their best to avoid becoming a hashtag, but Lafia's concentration is broken when she sees that a giant glizzy penetrated the front line. It tries to bust in her face, though luckily the dwarf comes in clutch to blow it off course before pounding it into the ground. Riveria reminds the young mage to continue casting the spell, however Lafia finds that no matter how hard she tries, the fact that everyone around her will be sent to the Shadow Realm if even the slightest mistake is made on her part sends the woman into a downward spiral of doubt until it is impossible to maintain the ability. And when all seems lost, everyone's hope is suddenly restored as the Sword Princess of Orario arrives on the battlefield. Ais activates the wind enchantment Ariel prior to charging headfirst into combat while commanding the air to deflect anything that could do her harm so she can focus on cutting the big bad caterpillars down to size. Tiana assists by kicking down a pillar to give them a free ticket to see Bug Jesus, leaving Tione to get tentacled by the monsters, but she decides that only the captain is allowed to eat her out and begins relentlessly fisting the poor creature regardless of the knowledge that its insides will burn anything it touches, up to the point where the monster finally welcomes the mercy of demise. The mages watch the fight progress as Reveria explains that their class is meant to turn the tides of battle with one decisive blow, then begins doing an incantation for a spell to summon a tempest of flames to wipe out every enemy who seeks to harm the members of the Loki Familia. A few hours later, everyone is preparing to leave the dungeon even though Tiana still insists on going deeper. They ascend to the 17th floor where the Caramel Queens discuss the new species of monster the guild encountered, and Lafia wonders how she can be useful to the team as Ais comes over to ask if the elf needs help with her bags. However, the walls abruptly start shattering as a herd of Minotaur comes out the holes to completely encircle them. Pizza Chest goes over to give the giant steak a foot job while Jiggly Jugs hands out a lethal neck massage. After seeing the impossible feat of the two sizes working together in harmony, the monsters had no choice but to run away in terror, though the captain orders that all of the pitiful bastards should be erased from existence. After the genocide, we find that Eisenbat has tracked the last Minotaur to the 5th level, where the Sword Princess hears a scream in the distance. Bell tries to escape from a very determined Minotaur until he finds himself at a dead end and cowers in fear as the monster is about to fist him, but luckily another adventurer is in the area to effortlessly bring an end to the mythical creature's life to save us from another isekai recap. Bell's savior goes over to check if he's alright, and at this moment our MC discovers love for the first time, before sprinting away from his crush like a true king, while Bet reveals he was watching what occurred from afar and finds it hilarious. The young man heads to the guild hall covered in the Minotaur's insides to scare the crap out of his handler, and after he cleans up, the woman scolds Bell for going to the 5th floor by himself while just being a level 1 adventurer. However, the only thing on our MC's mind is the baddie he met in the dungeon. The handler explains that Ais is a member of the Loki Familia who is a contender for the title of Best Sword Master across this kingdom, and she has also attained level 5, which puts her 4 ranks below the highest level ever recorded. Though Bell admits to already knowing this information but wanted answers about Ais' relationship status, so the handler crushes our MC's hopes by elaborating that because he is already a part of the Hestia Familia they can never be together. The depressed lad goes to cash in the magic stones gained from the dungeon, then starts heading home to his goddess, when the handler tries to cheer up Bell by revealing that women are more attracted to strong men, thus if he works really hard one day Ais might want to be with him. Bell returns to the guild house where Hestia immediately gives her only patron a warm embrace before checking to make sure he's alright. The goddess points out that she brought home some food from work today because a customer at the food cart ordered too much. Then the destitute deity enjoys the leftovers while complaining that no one wants to join their broke brigade, though Hestia doesn't mind keeping Bell all to herself. He tells the goddess that because their guild started 6 months ago, it's only natural that it will be difficult to get more members, which puts her in a very good mood as she gets ready to check how far his stats have risen. The maiden begins the ritual while attempting to persuade Bell against lusting for Ais. However, she notices that something is different this time and quickly ends the sight of grace. Hestia advises her familia to look closer to home for love as Bell observes his stats to see that the only increase was a result of him running away from monsters, but he notices a mark where a skill should be, though the deity dismisses it as being a simple mistake, so our MC walks away disappointed in himself for making little progress. The goddess muses that humans change very quickly and reveals that Bell actually got the Liaris Freese skill, which allows a person to grow in strength much faster than an average adventurer if the user maintains strong feelings towards the person whom he is currently in love with, and this makes Hestia upset because Bell got it from falling for another woman in the brief time he was away. In the capital, the Loki Familia finally makes their way to the surface. as Lafia apologizes for being a detriment to the team while forcing Ais to save her on multiple occasions, but Tiana says that she could do some favors for the Sword Princess to show appreciation. They return to their guild house and opens the gate to find their goddess rushing to greet them, where all the women sacrifice Lafia to the god of mischief to have her stress relievers thoroughly investigated. Loki quickly realizes that our elf girl seems to have increased in size, but following some protests the deity questions if her fun pillows have shrunk instead, which makes Tiana happy to have another member of the No Chest Club. Then their maiden announces that a party will be held to celebrate the team's safe return. Inside the bathroom, Lafia is sneaking a peek at Ais's perfect body as she wonders what to do to repay her kindness when Tiana peeps over the stall to see that there are still only 2 members of the Itty Bitty Titty Committee in this familia. Loki comes out the pool in the mood for her favorite activity, so the other women decide it's time to leave and sacrifice our elf girl once again to get a mammogram from their goddess, though she tells Ais to visit her office soon for a checkup. In the night, the Sword Princess enters the maiden's room to get her status updated by the female version of Diddy, who wants to have a party, though after a little encouragement Loki decides not to try it. The goddess exposes the markings normally hidden on her familia's back, then copies it on a paper to reveal that because Ais has been level 5 for 3 years and has reached her peak stats, the young woman will no longer see any notable increase until she advances to level 6. The Sword Princess walks through the halls where she sees Lafia waiting at her room door. Our little Rizlord gives Ais some high-quality crystal drops as a present for protecting her inside the dungeon, before running away like a true queen while fantasizing about the things she would like to do with Ais, and reaches the climax of happiness just from her imagination. The next day, Bell awakens to find the goddess attacking him with her juicy melons, but luckily the young king overcomes the great horny, then gets ready for another round of adventuring. Our MC walks through town when he suddenly senses someone observing him, as a maid conveniently comes by to hand over a magical stone that she claims Bell dropped, so the low IQ king thanks her for being honest prior to his stomach unleashing an earthquake. Seeing that he's starving, the seer gives Bell her box to munch on, which he immediately refuses to take until she says that our MC can return the favor by coming to visit the cafe after his raid. Inside the dungeon, we find Bell farming the monsters while wondering if there is any way to catch up to Ais, and even when faced with an overwhelming number of foes, our MC instead charges into fight, since every battle he wins will pave the way for his dream to become a reality. In the capital, Tione goes to the store to try and sell a unicorn horn on behalf of the guild, then following a few rounds of intense negotiation, Jiggly Jugs manages to scam the shop owner. At the forge, the blacksmiths are frustrated that Tiana keeps destroying their greatest creations, while Ais commissions her unbreakable blade to be sharpened, though because this job will take 5 days he lends her another people penetrator to use in its place. All our queens meet up in town, where our Rizlord gives her sugar baby a good luck charm to carry inside the dungeon, as the dark-skinned queens call them over to get ready for the celebration Loki is hosting at the tavern. A few hours later, Bell returns to the guild house and is surprised to see that his stats have dramatically increased, though Hestia is pissed because this is a result of the unique skill, which means our MC's feelings for Ais have also intensified. This realization forces the goddess to leave her confused familia in the house alone to go outside to find a private place to vent. Then the maiden wonders why Bell couldn't be satisfied with just the love she offered him over the months they were together. The young man goes to the cafe to fulfill the promise he made to Seer, where he is served an ungodly amount of food and immediately starts calculating how much it will all cost before concluding that he's going to be broke again, as the maid comes over to check on her victim, who resolves to at least enjoy his dinner. A hostess suddenly announces that the Loki Familia has arrived, so Bell begins looking at all the members who enter the fine establishment until he finally sees his crush at the back and suddenly has the urge to eat something else. The goddess treats her guild to a feast for successfully clearing a high-ranked dungeon, so everyone starts having fun in any way they can. A drunken furry brings up Ais' recent run-in with a Minotaur on the 5th floor where she had to save a poor bastard from being fisted before showering him in guts to make him cosplay as a giant tomato, which made the stranger run away screaming in terror without saying a word to his savior, but some of the teammates scolds the Wolfman because the blame lies with them for allowing some monsters to flee from the 17th floor. Bet admits that while this may be true, the rookie still tried to take on far more than he can manage, before declaring that the pathetic fool wasn't even worthy of being in Ais' presence since he's weak enough to become a hashtag from a simple strike from her blade. Bell sits in the corner listening to the intoxicated werewolf tarnishing his name in front of the maidens and runs outside the cafe while forgetting to pay the bill for the food as the two women follow behind him. However, they didn't reach RMC in time. The broken man dashes straight into the dungeon to take out his anger on any creature stupid enough to get in his way, where Bell resolves to do whatever it takes to be by the side of the woman he loves. The next day, we find Hestia at the door wondering if her familia left when she sees the beaten-up king coming from a successful raid. The warrior falls into the goddess's arms and proclaims that he seeks to be stronger, which makes Hestia decides to do all she can to help him achieve this goal. They go inside to update his status, where the maiden is shocked by Bell's rapid rate of growth, though she's still upset it occurred because of the skill and chooses not to reveal the truth since the other gods would try to take him away. Hestia tells Bell that his immense stat increase is due to a growth spurt from the innate talent he has for adventuring and begs the young man not to leave her alone. Thus Bell promises that no matter how strong he gets, this familia will always be the place to call home. Then with a smile the goddess confesses that she is going to be gone for the next 3 days. A few hours later, we find Bell apologizing for not paying his bill prior to running away, and the cafe owner thanks RMC for saving her the time it would take to beat the money out of him. Seer reveals that she prepared lunch for the young adventurer to take into the dungeon, though Bell refuses to take it until the heavenly woman activates her charm to leave him no choice in the matter. The cafe owner confides that the maid was really the one who stopped them from giving Bell a free facelift and asks RMC to stay safe on the raid, before pushing him outside the tavern so he can begin his journey inside the dungeon. At the Loki Guild house, we find that Ais is upset about what happened last night. Orario goes over and discovers that the boy who ran away was also the one she saved in the dungeon, so the Sword Princess decides to apologize to him for what happened, while the rest of the waifus come over to cheer her up. They take the Sword Princess to the fanservice clothing store, and Lafia starts freaking out when she imagines Ais wearing the skimpy costumes, but after somehow slaying the Great Horny, the elf takes her crush to a much more respectable shop. However, our queens still can't find anything suitable for their guildmate, which makes them take Ais to all the stores they know of until one finally fits perfectly. Lafia resolves to buy it for her sugar baby, and the other two women admit that our elf came up with this idea to make her feel better, though this seems to make Ais sad. The waifus go into the city where they encounter Hestia going off on her journey while noticing that there are a lot of gods roaming the streets today, when out of nowhere the Sword Princess apologizes to Lafia for permitting her emotional state to make someone else feel uncomfortable. But the elf says that she did all this to help Ais in the only way she possibly could, and with some coercion from Pancake Chest the blonde babe thanks Lafia, which brings a smile to the mage's face. In the night, the Ganesha Familia is hosting a party for all the gods in the capital. The goddess of love and beauty comes downstairs wearing a very familiar hairstyle, then goes over to the table to see Hestia stealing food from the trays. Freya wants to discuss something important, but Loki rushes over to meet with the baddest bitch in heaven, so Hestia takes this chance to question if the Sword Princess has a partner, and Loki kindly describes the wonderful things she would do to any guy who even looks at her favorite human. Mama Freya tries to de-escalate by complimenting Loki's expensive dress, though the god of mischief admits that she wore it to flex on a certain broke goddess. However, Hestia wonders why Loki left her stress relievers at home instead of bringing them along like a normal woman, which makes the leaders of the Itty Bitty Titty Committee and Jiggly Jugs restart the never-ending cycle of war until Loki walks away in shame after tanking the maximum amount of mental abuse an individual could reasonably handle. Hephaestus comes over to Freya where Hestia is quick to greet her best friend, but the divine blacksmith finds our maiden suspicious, since the last time they met she guilt-tripped her way into freeloading off the Hephaestus Familia to the point that they had to kick her out. The virgin goddess confesses that things are different as she now has a familia with Bell, and for a second Freya gives Hestia the death stare prior to saying she has to leave to run an important errand at the moment. Once they are alone, our goddess kneels to the divine blacksmith to beg a favor, and Hephaestus explains that her guild's equipment costs too much for her to afford, though Hestia stays in the good girl position for so long that the Scarlet Queen decides to hear her out. Pillow Chest admits to being a useless goddess who serves no purpose, but the person that gave the Hestia Familia a chance is hardworking with a singular goal to get stronger, and the only contribution she can think of is to give him a high-quality weapon to lessen his burden no matter how long it will take to work off the payment. Hephaestus sees that her old friend has truly changed, thus she decides to help the short queen, before taking up a hammer to make it personally since no one can find out what they're doing. The duo enters the forge to make the weapon together where the two goddesses put their all into creating a worthy item which will grow stronger with the bonded wielder. Inside the dungeon we find the duo doing a late-night raid where Ais is uncertain if the new blade can handle her full strength while Lafia resolves to learn Riveria's technique to move around as she chants. They walk into a room to see the Ganesha Familia preparing for the big event tomorrow when our Rizlord asks the Sword Princess to go with her, which Ais agrees to. The women tries to sneak back into the guild house, however Riveria is waiting to scold them for going on a dungeon raid when their body is not fully recovered. The commotion calls over the drunken goddess who decides to punish Ais by forcing the young lady to be her escort to the upcoming event despite the protest of Lafia. Our elf spends the night crying because Loki ruined the carefully made plans she created to spend more time alone with Ais, so the mage steels herself to gain more courage to impress even the Sword Princess. The next day Bell ponders on when Hestia will come back, as a maid at the cafe calls him over to ask if he can return Seer's wallet to her because they noticed that it was accidentally left behind after she ran off to the big event to watch all the competitors face off against the mighty monsters captured from the lower floors of the dungeon. Near the coliseum we see that Loki has called a meeting with the goddess of beauty to inquire into why she's trying to steal a member from another familia, and Freya confesses to liking the young man simply because he's pretty while constantly glaring at Ais, where the deity coincidentally spots Bell running towards the event and makes up an excuse to leave the meeting early to deal with something. Under the Coliseum everyone who looks upon Freya succumbs to her charm as the heavenly woman frees a monster to test how far the boy she's been watching can go. Our MC can't seem to find Seer, but he discovers his maiden instead, who is determined to take him on a date regardless of his quest to return his friend's wallet. The duo explores all the fun areas outside the event together until they perceive a giant ape exiting the Coliseum, who immediately starts chasing after them for no apparent reason. Ganesha gets a report that many monsters have somehow escaped their cages, so the god decides to send out an alert to all nearby familia requesting their help, even if his reputation will be tarnished, because the security of the people is the #1 priority. Bell takes his goddess into the slums in an attempt to escape their pursuer, but finds no help available as the residents has mastered the art of minding their own business. The devil monkey falls from the sky to separate Hestia from her protector before walking over to finish the job. However, Bell finds himself on the ground paralyzed by fear, though he quickly overcomes this and charges forward to protect the deity, but the body divider failed when it was needed the most. The young man flashbangs the monster to give them a chance to make a clutch escape. Bell acknowledges that he cannot face such a beast, so he resolves to lock the maiden behind a gate to buy more time for her to get away. Hestia pleads with him not to be left alone, which results in our MC explaining that he will not lose any more of his family prior to rushing off to lure the giant ape away. It's revealed that at a young age Bell's grandfather told many stories about adventurers until the old man was reportedly attacked by monsters in the mountains in such a way that not even a sign of his body remained. Following this, our MC tried to join every familia in the city, though no one wanted to take in someone with zero potential no matter how much he begged. But one day he met Hestia roaming the streets, who offered to make his dream to become an adventurer into a reality. The warrior flees as far as possible, with the ape close behind to get Bell in a position where it's impossible to retreat, and he bravely chooses to meet Jesus on his feet instead of cowering in the corner like last time. However, our MC observes that Hestia followed him into danger, a second before Harambe sniffs her out. Then he moves to save the maiden from ascending back to heaven in pieces. Bell curses the deity for coming back, thus she reminds him that he promised to never leave her alone. The monster decides to continue the lethal game of tag, so the duo retreats further into the slums and conveniently finds the perfect place to plan their next move. Jiggly Jugs is confident that if she updates Bell's stat points, the power boost could be enough to secure victory, though our MC doubts this since his weapon was broken in the fight, which makes the Virgin Goddess of the Hearth reveal that all this time she was carrying around a unique tear blade with the ability to grow stronger alongside its wielder, that she calls the Hestia knife. The devil monkey relentlessly seeks its prey in the city and notices the glow from the site of grace in the distance, then goes to delete our MC from the mortal plane. Hestia tells Bell that if he believes in his goddess, no one can defeat him, before sending the young hero out to the front lines to face the enemy head-on. The ape tries to squash the adventurer, but he runs up its arm to land a lethal blow, which drives Harambe into a rage-fueled frenzy, while Bell uses the momentum from the attack to slingshot himself back at the monster. And when it's staggered, our MC goes in close to dodge the pitiful attempts of resistance so he can introduce the Hestia knife to the giant monkey's heart to finally bring this fight to an end. Seeing that it's now safe, everyone in the slums appears to cheer on Bell for defeating such a strong opponent, including Freya, who has been observing the show in pure ecstasy from the roofs above, and Ais, who was prepared to step in if the battle was to take a wrong turn. The deity congratulates her familia on doing a great job. However, the events seems to have taken a big toll on Hestia since she drifts off into sleep mode.
Like for a cat girl, subscribe for a waifu, and remember to stay swifty.
Ooh.